Republicans who believe that this is their last hurrah. This is their chance now, even though they're likely to hold the Senate regardless in the next midterm because you've got 3 times as many Democrats up. But this is the chance. So one, there's going to be an enormous temptation under those circumstances to blow up the filibuster entirely. Get rid of it for legislation as well so they can jam things through. 2, they're going to pack the courts. They're going to increase the size of appeals courts and put through as many nominees as they possibly can so that you can have an enduring impact for decades after they're gone. 3, they're going to go for the biggest tax cut that you could ever possibly imagine, which Trump has proposed, and they'll probably add on to it. And 4, you're going to see federal voter suppression laws that will use Texas and North Carolina as models.
What do you think about the impact, win or lose, on the party and its policies, particularly the Republican Party and its policies? Just looking at some of the words that Trump has used to describe himself and describe the party. And David Frum writing about Trump representing underrepresented people generally, or others saying, questioning whether the Republican Party is a theocratical Southern party if you elect Trump from New York City to be its nominee. Or when Trump was asked May 27th about his views about what the party would be like 5 years from now, he said the Republican Party would be a very different party if I'm elected, but I think even nominated. He said we will become a workers' party, that those people who have not gotten a real wage increase in 18 years will find a representative in me. And that, I'm interested in the panel's, anyone's response to that. As win or lose, is there does he show in his nomination such a disconnect? He's a big business guy who's taking worker rhetoric as opposed to business rhetoric. And does he show a disconnect between traditional Republican policy and the Republican base or middle-class voters? If they lose the election, that'll be 3 elections in a row, so there's a recalibration if you use 1984 in terms of the Democratic Party as historical precedent. Is there such a disconnect that he shows in his nomination between where the country is, where the people are, where the middle class is, that he was able to tap into, that the Republican Party, Ryan's agenda rollout this week and beyond notwithstanding, will change its views of policy, and that opens up a moment for more moderate policy, for bipartisan agreement, for a different Republican Party in policy in 2020 and beyond? Is this a realignment in the party as a result of Trump? Yeah, Laura.
Well, let me just say that a lot of what the book that I wrote on jockeying for the American presidency actually does is argue and talk about the importance of winners versus losers, and really also winners and losers with respect to the ideological trajectories that they do sort of alter or change or put a party on. I certainly do believe that the trajectory of the Republican Party is changing. I don't think we know yet how it's changing. The one sort of historical analogy I would look at is actually what happened to the Democratic Party when William Jennings Bryan became the nominee. He certainly lost, but after that, he ran again, lost again, but the Democratic Party itself became much more populist in its orientation. There was no way they were going to elect a Grover Cleveland type of Democrat anymore. So it is, I think, indicative of the fact that we will see some ideological changes down the road. Whether he wins or loses and how he loses will end up being important. And I agree with Matthew that it's really important looking at this understanding of these somewhat conservatives. I mean, where Trump got his largest support, his greatest percentages, were in the northern and midwestern states, so northeastern. So Massachusetts, 49%. He did not gain that in South Carolina. When you go to Pennsylvania, it was tremendous, his win. And I think this is where the Democratic Party has walked away from that more blue-collar. I don't think of them as conservative. I think of them as traditional. When I lived in Pennsylvania for a while, when I was teaching at Villanova, I always used to say, it's amazing to me here, everyone in October puts chrysanthemums on their porch. And I was just stunned at the regularity of the traditions. Because being a Californian, that's nothing that I know personally. And I think that's what Trump speaks to, is that sense of traditional life. I think in some ways, and this is not really a joke, but in some ways he is sort of Archie Bunker. And he does represent all that Archie Bunker was trying to hold on to throughout that entire All in the Family episode.
Matthew.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment about the future of the Republican Party. We haven't discussed so far the bifurcation among Republicans according to education, which has become very apparent throughout this entire primary process. And it's just the fact that over the last couple decades, an enormous number of whites without college degrees have moved into the GOP. And so our picture of the Republican Party has changed over time, from being a very country club type party to then being kind of the moral majority party / Reagan party, to now it's becoming, and I think Sarah Palin, who I wrote about and I followed, and she was a precursor to this. It is the kind of white populist party. That's, I think, what Trump is saying when he means that the Republican Party is going to be a workers' party down the road. And